Hello everyone, and thank you for attending this presentation, Kicking the Gender Barrier. This is going to be a feminist analysis of the social media commentary regarding Sarah Fuller's kickoff in the fall of 2020. So a brief presentation overview. We're going to be providing an introduction, some background literature and theoretical framework, methods, results, and wrapping up with the discussion and implications of this work. So on November 28th, 2020, Sarah Fuller became the first woman to kick in a Power 5 football game for Vanderbilt University. And this kickoff matters for two main reasons. The culture of athletics, first, is often considered male-dominated and filled with toxic masculinity, the suppression of women, and so her decision to combat these notions in play is pretty important. And secondly, American society highly values sports, particularly football, and Fuller broke into this game, challenging the notion that women cannot compete with men. And because of this, more women competing in predominantly male college sports may have important implication for athletics culture and the value that society places on our female athletes. The purpose of this presentation is to use liberal feminist theory and examine reactions to Fuller's kick through the nexus of social media and sport culture by investigating Vanderbilt University's Instagram post about her on the day of her historic kickoff and the subsequent public commentary on these posts. And social media is becoming increasingly important for athlete promotion. Other research has used social media as a source of data, and this research builds off of that as well. Historically, the media coverage has perpetuated stereotypical views of women in sport. And finally, most research in this area has focused on the coverage and not commentary, and this is hopefully extending this research into the commentary realm as well. And Fuller's actions offer a really unique opportunity to better understand the role of sports media in our culture and its influence on the value of women in sport. So just to start off with providing some background on female kickers before Fuller. So the female kickers before Fuller in Division I helped set the stage for Fuller's success and potentially the success of other female athletes. So importantly, Fuller has competed in the Southeastern Conference, which is a Power 5, one of the Power 5 conferences, again, regarded as one of the most elite athletic conferences. But the term Power 5 is relatively new, so the women who competed before Fuller, here you can see Katie Hinda and April Goss, are outside of the Power 5 and said to have competed at a lower athletic level there. Katie Hinda was one of the first female football players. She started off at the University of Colorado, where she was raped by her teammate. She then transferred to the University of New Mexico, and in 2003, she was the first woman to kick points in an FBS game. In 2015, April Goss followed and scored for Kent State University. So unlike Fuller, these women were members of their football teams for years and not just called upon to kick at the last minute. However, we should note that Fuller's actions are still respectable. They just came about in a different way. Historically, women have not been welcomed on the football field, but over the years we've seen increases in participation rates among girls competing at the high school football level, and we've also seen an increase in opportunities available for women to compete in their own professional football leagues too. Moving on to women in sport and the media, building off of this literature, media tends to highlight highlighting women. Athletes can provide a chance to either challenge current ideologies of women and female athletes or bolster traditional notions of the typical feminized ideals. Men have historically received more airtime and coverage in printed and online media than women, and women's coverage tends to note their physical appearance and sex appeal over their athletics accomplishments, whereas the coverage provided to men tends to note perseverance and strength and power. Research notes that impressions made through interactions on social media might be particularly critical in how people start to form perceptions and attitudes about athletes or groups of athletes, and in this case, female athletes. Women athletes themselves are prominent figures on our social media and have used these platforms to challenge traditional ideals about women in sport and gender roles as well. work in these areas does tend to overemphasize professional and or international athletes, and this work is extending this literature more into the college athlete realm. And additionally, these studies largely exclude commentary, as I mentioned earlier, so understanding commentary provides a unique way we can better improve and understand the experiences of college athletes, particularly women in sport. So the theoretical framework for this work is liberal feminism. Here, feminism is defined as both an intellectual commitment and a political movement that seeks justice for women and the end of sexism in all forms. It's motivated by the quest for social justice. Feminist inquiry provides a wide range of perspectives on social, cultural, economic, and political phenomenon. Liberal feminism extends these ideas to enhance personal autonomy of women, advocating for their freedom to live their own lives free of coercive influences, predominantly from men in society, and by encouraging women to decide the direction of communities, cultures, and institutions. So, through liberal feminism, women have sought to change society's structures and barriers to equality, and with one often pursued avenue being sport. So 4 main areas of liberal feminism that will be used to examine the social commentary on Fuller's posts. And these 4 components are objectification, oppression, patriarchy, and stereotypes and gender roles. So objectification involves the social cultural components that sort of degrade a woman's worth to her sexuality and appearance. In the case of sports, this objectification may also hold women to lower athletic standards. And objectification of women is particularly prominent on media platforms, so this is the space that this research is examining further. Oppression is the inequitable use of authority and involves the deprivation of rights to women that are simultaneously given to men, and it includes communication to actively condescend or control women as well. Patriarchy is a societal system in which men maintain power. A main area of sport where patriarchy continues to remain very strong is in exclusively male sports, such as football, because women are seen as incapable of competing or understanding the game and thus cannot bring value to this arena. And this is certainly an area that we saw Fuller challenged as well. And finally, the 4th component, stereotypes and gender roles. Stereotyping involves maintaining a widely held thought about groups of people and their behaviors. However, these may not actually reflect the reality of these groups or their truths. And gender roles are how a gender in this case, women, is expected to dress, act, and speak. And we know women are supposed to be nurturing, quiet, and things like that. Methods, so the Instagram accounts used were Vanderbilt Athletics, Vanderbilt Football, and Vanderbilt Soccer. And data was limited to these accounts because these accounts, the first one frequently showcases various athletes at Vanderbilt, and not just Fuller. However, the focus was on Fuller. And the other 2, football and soccer, were used because Fuller became a member of both the soccer and the football squads. Comments collected only pertain to posts from the day of the game where that she did her first kickoff, because she received the most attention during this time as well. And then this resulted in a total of 27 posts and total comments roughly 3,052. Deductive analytical approach using the 4 previously mentioned themes of liberal feminism, objectification, oppression, patriarchy, and stereotypes and gender roles. And then a 5th theme, other, for areas and commentary that did not fit those 4 codes. First cycle coding led to second cycle pattern coding. And it's important to note that this deduction certainly involves a set of assumptions, and this use of a predetermined theory, here being liberal feminism, which epistemologically ties me as the researcher to the data and may influence the inquiry and the results obtained. This is a downfall of more qualitative work. However, this opportunity is still beneficial because we can gather and better understand the attitudes and beliefs of a group of people toward female athletes, in particular Sarah Fuller in this case, and that is certainly a pro of qualitative work. results of this work, we had 3,052 comments that resulted in roughly 3,449 codes here. And on the next few slides, I'll go through the unsupportive and supportive commentary. And you can note here that the majority of the codes resulted in stemmed from negative, unsupportive anti-feminist commentary with 1,757 unsupportive codes, which is over 50% of the commentary there. And then we'll go ahead and get started. So these unsupportive comments reflecting the code. So objectification was the most common unsupportive area. And you can see some of the quotes here. Congrats on the worst kickoff in college football history. Others expressed hopes that she would get injured to teach her a lesson, and others sexually objectified her with OMG, I would stick her blank, and she's thick AF. Oppression, and others with this objectification noted that the kickoff was embarrassing and a joke and it didn't go very far, and that others, children or someone who was maimed or injured, could have done a better job kicking than she did. Oppression was next with 13.2% of the codes. Wow, I guess the rest of the team doesn't mean blank anymore. It's just going to be about this girl, sad. And then this other user expressing in a paragraph form, this whole comment section is cringe. No, nothing was accomplished just because a female played in a P5 game means nothing. There's literally nothing to celebrate. Yeah, cool, she plays D1 football. A blank ton of people have and will in the future. And then another commenter said, let's talk about women's rights. Not. So the first two oppressive comments demonstrate feelings of authority, and the third reflects a need to control women and continue to keep them down and deny them rights. Unsupportive comments continued, so gender roles and stereotypes are next. Women should just stick to women's sports. Girls belong in the kitchen, not on a football field. Again, comments that are expressed in previous literature that continue to hope that women stay in their historical and traditional roles rather than challenging the current system. Patriarchy, one example, females these days think they invincible or some blank. And other unsupportive comments noted that this was a publicity stunt pulled by Vanderbilt because they were having a really rough season and a pretty poor losing record as well. Moving into some more supportive comments in these codes. So counter oppression here made up the most. People commenting things like, go Sarah, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And yes, thank you Fuller, who's next? Others noted that she was making history, hoping that she would continue to kick for Vanderbilt in the future and in future games, which she ended up doing. These were done in attempts to lift Fuller up above some of the anti-feminist commentary that we saw on some of the previous slides. Counter-patriarchy, many claim that Fuller was a ghost or a beast, and these terms tend to be preserved for men in sport, and this certainly notes that that Fuller was at least potentially on an equal playing field with some of her male peers. Others noted that the same salty blank guys who are mocking her are the same ones who didn't even make the JV football team. And then another user noted, if it were a guy who did the kick, fair kick, maybe a little short, but oh well, you live and you learn. Society, when it's a girl who goes on for 3.6 seconds, ah ha ha ha, this is just pathetic. Who in their right mind would let a woman on their team? Police that went like 2 feet in front of her. She gonna end up in the hospital. She doesn't know what she's doing. Call the football police and arrest her. So this quote uses sarcasm and attempts to show unsupportive users that women can compete with men, and showcases other users' hypocrisy when reflecting the performance of women and men in the football field. Counter stereotypes and gender roles. Many in this area noted that she was a trailblazer for all women. Others said she's already breaking stereotypes in college football. Support your athlete better. This user was calling out other users for being oppressive and rude. Fuller being on the team's roster in a uniform is making history. When she scores today, which she didn't, but she scored later, will also be part of history or her story. WFLA football players are in full support of Fuller, looking forward to a great game. And WFLA is a professional football league for women. And then this other counter-stereotypical quote noted, "You've changed the way girls think about what they can do. Get after it." Counter-objectification quotes included, "The kick was literally designed to be done exactly how she did it. She's playing on an SEC football team for a reason." So this is really challenging some of those previous users who noted that her kick was embarrassing or a joke or terrible. Those users failed to realize or accept that Fuller's kick was specifically designed to be a squib kick. Those are lower, shorter, potentially bounce multiple times, making it harder for the opposing team to return the football. So she executed it how it was supposed to be because the team was unable to catch and return her kickoff there. Others noted, "Stop being pigs," and another chimed in with, "Stop objectifying her." Finally, other supportive comments noted that, "I'm a proud alum and this gives me all the feels." Other comments that were unrelated to football, to Fuller, largely stemmed from the poor performance of the team and wanting the head coach to be ousted. So these other areas included, "Try winning, our offense sucks, fire Mason, fire everyone, anchor down," which was the school's mantra, and then comments tagging other users were undetermined to be positive or negative, or unsupportive or supportive. All right, discussing each of the individual codes. So this study examined 27 posts and 3,052 comments from Vanderbilt's Instagram's account, with the purpose of exploring this unique intersection of social media, our athletics culture, and the value we place on female athletes. So unsupportive area, starting with objectification. This related to both her appearance and her performance. This was the most common form of negativity or lack of support because it's often considered one of the easiest ways to keep women down by making them feel worthless, whether by their appearance or their performance. This equates a woman's worth to her performance on the field, in this case Fuller, but off the field, Fuller was considered a leader. She even gave a halftime pump-up speech for her team, which would not have been possible if she was not seen as a leader or appreciated by the other men in the locker room. This does, however, support much of the previous literature on the objectification of women in sport. However, some of the other supportive commentary countered the claims that Fuller didn't execute the kick appropriately, as we mentioned, the squib kick, and the lack of ability for the opposing team to return it. Supportive commentary countering hegemonic masculinity are helpful and assist in reinforcing the goals of liberal feminism, freeing women, providing autonomy, noting that they can change the direction of our society and giving them a platform to do so. However, it's important to note that these comments alone are a great first step, but they won't result in the structural change that liberal feminism seeks. So we're going to need other steps after these commentary to continue to bolster liberal feminism and allow women to truly find more parity in sports, particularly sports historically dominated by male athletes. Moving on to the discussion of stereotypes and gender roles, unsupportive commentary notes that it supports the previous scholarship that society wants women to maintain a feminized ideal and maintain traditional stereotypes and gender roles. When stereotypes and gender roles continue to categorize women, they are less able to exercise their personal autonomy noted in liberal feminism due to the coercive influences of these other viewpoints. And it's likely that some of this lack of support comes from uncomfortable fans and users on these platforms who are not used to seeing women suit up and compete with men, and this hurts their ego or challenges their history and what they know about college athletics and particularly football. Supportive areas provided support for Fuller leading the way for other women to follow her path. The comments about girls now seeing that they can do more, right? garnered interest and support from fans all over the country. There were comments from Alabama fans who would not arguably probably tune into a Vanderbilt game, but wanted to see Fuller do her thing and have that historic moment there. And that certainly signifies the importance of this event and her ability to break down barriers and gender roles and stereotypes. Patriarchy, the unsupportive area, a liberal feminist lens is beneficial in highlighting how patriarchy cultivates a social organization that constrains women to exist in male-centered worlds. So bringing up the experiences of former women in football. So one of the users discussed women competing in college football before her and having negative experiences, and even mentioned that Hinda had been raped by a former teammate. So by bringing up this negative, traumatic, awful experience of another woman in football, this user could have seen their comments as a way to prevent other women from entering the sport, maintaining men's power and privilege in college football. Additionally, other research notes that football itself is an enactment of power by men through male domination and violence. Supportive comments noted that Fuller was a goat and a beast. Again, comments usually reserved for male athletes, which could be an attempt for these users to place Fuller and appreciate her as an equal to her male counterparts. And when women compete in traditionally men's only sports, they are supported. They can change the game and potentially alter the patriarchal nature of sports. And again, this goes back to liberal feminism, with women creating their own avenues and challenging historical and traditional ways of living and being as a woman. And others commented, "Play like a girl." The message on Fuller's helmet that was advocating for both the nonprofit organization that involves getting girls and women involved in STEM areas, and challenges the concept as well that athletes or that women have to compete in the same way that men do. So play like a girl. And then the final code, oppression. So unsupportive areas, these users attempted to demean and maliciously use their limited power on social media to keep Fuller down. This was also expressed in the shock and confusion over the attention that Fuller received. However, these users who attempted to oppress Fuller feeds into the idea that this was in fact a really big event, and it was big enough for them to feel that they needed to express their unsupportive and anti-feminist perspective on the posts provided. And then supportive areas noted that she was making history or her story and provided positive emojis and other positive comments. So supporting Fuller. Again, it's important to note that the support provided was less than the anti-feminist comments here, and that support needs to go beyond comments and get to the action point if we are to achieve more parity in women in sports. So some implications of this work. So this research offers practitioners in athletics and education the opportunity to better understand social media, one contributing factor to the college athlete experience. So I would advocate for continued and increased education for athletes and administrators on social media. We're seeing a growth in importance of social media and college athletics and marketing and the experiences of our college athletes. Much of the commentary was also unsupportive, so we're going to probably need to educate our athletes how to handle such lack of support, or train them on how not to take it to heart and things like that. This is particularly important given we're going to see some change with the NCAA's rules on name, image, likeness, and athletes are likely to spend even more time on social media to either promote themselves or endorse brands, things like that. And this can lead to heightened pressures and more engagement with fans and users on social media. Additionally, we might want to prepare female athletes in particular on how to handle this potential negativity, because research does note that women are aware of their dual roles as women in society and athletes in society, and the ways in which those intersect and may cause disequilibrium for society and for others. Significance of athletic departments in promoting their athletes and continuing advocacy and support for their endeavors athletically, academically, and socially. And in this case, for Fuller, this was certainly athletic, but also very social, justice oriented as well. We need to investigate ways to cultivate stronger, supportive online communities for athletes, and this might be particularly important for administrators and marketing and athlete development, and they should consider how to cultivate such a community. Some users might say this is already the case, but again, the majority of the comments were unsupportive of Fuller, so we might need to reconsider our lens in that way. And finally, social media can be used to allow athletes to continue to challenge and break through social barriers. Here are the references provided throughout. And finally, just wanted to say thank you. Hopefully this study offers scholars and practitioners ways we can learn from this historic event and apply this knowledge in future cases. So it's probably the case that Fuller opened the door for more women to express interest in football and other male-dominated sports. So the implications of this are not going away, and it leads to an exciting future for college athletics. So thank you so much for attending this presentation. Please reach out with any thoughts, comments, or questions.